Welcome to Nomad Capitalist Live with Andrew Henderson. Andrew is a self-made serial entrepreneur who's taken his business success from the United States and converted it into a location-independent global empire. After years of paying way too much in taxes and feeling less and less free, Andrew learned the hard way that there's a way to keep your freedom and keep more of your hard-earned money. Each week, Andrew shares tips and insights gleaned from his world travels on how you can find more freedom, grow and protect your assets, and live a radical life on your own terms. And now, here's your host, perpetual traveler, international entrepreneur, and citizen of the world, Andrew Henderson.
It is Nomad Capitalist Live. My name is Andrew Henderson. This is the show where we talk about the legal strategies to help you grow your wealth, protect your wealth, and live the life of your dreams all around the world. Thank you for being with us. As always, thanks for subscribing on iTunes. Hit that subscribe button and enjoy yourself. And here we are, wrapping down another year. And got a great guest as always today. Got one of your questions to get to coming up later, so you're going to want to listen to the entire show.
Singapore Precious Metals Exchange offers safe, secure transport of precious metals directly into bonded and insured vaults. Visit sgpmx.com or call Scottsdale Mint in the U.S. at 888-745-2279, extension 3.
I know my Capitalist Live. It is Andrew Henderson. We've got a little bit of a different interview for you today. You know, we talked to so many different expat entrepreneurs who are starting businesses all around the world that I wanted to go back to a guy I've known for a while who lives in my old neck of the woods. He is based in the United States, but he runs works with a company in Singapore where they store your gold. And I want to talk to him not only about his story, but also about what they're doing over there in Singapore with something that's pretty interesting. Eric Highsmith from Scottsdale Mint and the Singapore Gold and Silver Exchange. But welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Joining us by phone, right?
By phone. Yeah, absolutely.
You're like the Donald Trump of the campaign cycle. He's always on the phone. So that's we're off to a good start. I want to hear, about you because I'm always interested, what gets people into the gold business. I always ask the question, tell me about you and where did the entrepreneurship begin? What is your story and how did you get into becoming a gold guy?
Well, I think it roots back to really a personal interest and personal investment in the gold and silver market, stemming back probably 10 or 15 years. Following guys like Jim Sinclair, for instance, in his JS mindset, and really looking at the markets fundamentally, seeing issues with the dollar, with the Federal Reserve, and then economies worldwide. And the entrepreneur side in me was to go out, find new ways to protect myself. Precious metals offered that insurance on my money in a way that I couldn't get anywhere else. And this is just personally speaking. But in doing so and kind of learning the markets, making new connections throughout the marketplace, I actually teamed up with a company by the name of Scottsdale Mint in the late 2000s, really at the beginning of the bull run in silver and in gold. And in doing so, was able to come on board as one of the first employees of a startup. And so not necessarily myself as the entrepreneur starting the company, but as one of the key components to building a new venture.
Right.
And the venture was to go out and really find a new way to sell bullion. And if you look back through the years, bullion was really, people invested in it because it was a commodity. And there had never been a time when a company had said, hey, let's take this commodity and maybe we'll make it a little bit better. We'll sex it up a bit. And that was the founder's dream, was to take bullion, dress it up a bit, and we actually created the brand Scottsdale Mint back in 2008. So it was my undertaking to go out and find distributors, find a network dealers worldwide that could distribute our product. And over the past 6 years, we've been able to grow the business, vertically integrate all our production, do quite a bit of business all throughout the world, including here stateside. Both now for bullion, of course, contract manufacturing, but now even collectible coins, commemorative coins. We do a lot of legal tender product for nations around the world, and do quite a bit of licensing.
So where did the idea of Singapore come in? Because, it's interesting when you're talking about, you were starting this thing, 6-7 years ago, back at a time when a lot of people weren't doing the offshore route. It's only been recently that everybody just has jumped on the bandwagon, and now people are saying, we've got storage in Ottawa, Canada. We're offshore too. And
anybody really can go out and store. You can set up a Brinks account and, hey, I'm offering storage now, and I'm speaking on a dealer level. So a dealer can say, I want to partner with Brinks. I'm going to take their storage structure, mark it up a bit to my clients, and then, hey, we've got storage with Brinks now all across the world. The problem with that, though, as we all know, Brinks is a U.S. company, and if you're trying to mitigate your risk and deleverage from Western finance, Brinks isn't the answer. And there's quite a few companies that not only store their metal with Brinks, but also have their clients do the same. So going back to your question, yeah, Scottsdale had grown the business substantially, and going into 2013, we needed a new way to service really the East, Southeast Asia, Australia, the Middle East, India. And when I say service, really distribute our product. We needed a hub to put our metal, and Singapore was the answer. In particular, the Singapore Precious Metals Exchange.
Right.
And number one, they offer fully dedicated segregated holdings. It's in a geographic, diverse environment. You're in a very stable economic environment, official legal system, the whole gamut. But Singapore also offered the exchange, that is, also offered the ability to be completely deleveraged from Western finance, zero U.S. ownership, and it was in a strategic location for us where we could put our metal there and distribute it throughout the East. So it's been a growing relationship. In that, back in 2013, we were actually named the certified broker for North America, which essentially means any metal leaving this part of the world comes through our doors in Scottsdale, and I'll get a little bit more into that.
So that's pretty
go.
cool. What you guys do is, if someone wants to send their stuff to Singapore, they basically just send it through you, and it gets all taken care of. What I'm curious to hear about is I often ask entrepreneurs about innovation and kind of what they think is the next innovation point in the industry. And one of the things that people have been saying probably since the dark ages is, I like gold, but I feel so I'm unable to be leveraged in any way. It's kind of just a dead asset. I don't get a yield off of it. I can't eat it. It just kind of sits there. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you and just get past some of the basics is the idea of borrowing money on gold holdings, and I think that's something that you guys have kind of pioneered.
It really is. The exchange does offer a program. It's a loan-to-value program where you can leverage, or actually you can loan against or collateralize your bullion.
Right.
And what that allows you to do is stay vested in the price of the metal. But also, if you need to access capital quickly, you can do so, and it's at a very inexpensive yield. You're talking LIBOR plus 1% or so. And all this is done through a partner bank in Singapore by the name of DBS.
Which is one of the big ones.
Is a big one. Yeah, you got it. So this can be done currently, as it sits right now, it can be done for any non-U.S. citizens. And that LTV ratio is up to 80%. However, we expect that in the very near future, we will have the ability to offer this to U.S. citizens as well. And that'll be big news. U.S. being a very big market for precious metals. And I'd say the majority, 60% or so of the clients that exist in the exchange, both on a storage and trading basis, are from North America, Canada, and the United States. This is going to pose a very unique structure. Add in all the other value-add propositions that the exchange already does offer. This kind of just is the icing on the cake to say, this is why I want my metal there.
80% right. So I have $1 million in gold, and I can basically, through DBS, which, the reason they don't take U.S. persons, I mean, people who have our book, the best offshore bank. So that's not really one of the banks that you can go to there in Singapore and just open up an account in the most under most circumstances. There are some other good ones, but you can basically just go in and put your $1 million in gold, get an $800,000 loan at a very low interest rate, and it's kind of like almost like borrowing from your life insurance policy or something. One of those old tricks. Where now you've got the cash, and if you want to make a long bet on gold or a long bet on silver, then you've got a fiat debt to repay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it does, and it's structured in a way where if you have a margin call on another investment, your metal is still held segregated. So even though you're custodizing that metal to DBS, your metal is still segregated. So those bars that you sent are still your bars. You're not a piece of a bigger picture. You don't own a piece of a bar. It's not in an allocated or a pool account. Everything is still segregated, even under the LTV structure. So it really is a neat program.
Yeah, what's cool, I've been to the Freeport, and I've worked with some of the guys that I know you guys work with, kind of up the food chain, and they've taken me in and they've shown, here's the gold. Obviously, they don't want to show you who owns it, but here's this guy's bag, and here's this guy's bag. I know that there's that guy's crate. There's his 200 big silver bars that just went down. I remember the first time I was there, just gone down like 20%. It was horrible, but. That's how it works, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Eric Highsmith is with us from Scottsdale Mint, and we're kind of talking shop a little bit different than usual. Let me ask you this, because this is a question I ask everyone, and I want to hear how you think it plays into what you're doing. I ask people, how are you planting flags? How are you diversifying? You've got a business, obviously, you're on the ground, you're personally in the U.S., you have this relationship in Singapore. Are there more flags to come? Are there more flags? Will there be another Singapore? Will there be another currency? Will there be another offering? I mean, where do you see the next level of diversification that makes sense? Well,
as a precious metals fabricator, here in the U.S., we do want to obviously diversify, and a lot of what we do passes on to our clients. I think the big message with the exchange and with gold and silver is the ultimate goal of it all is really to free ourselves from the derivatives by providing an independent market making system, and that's what the exchange provides, because it's basing everything on a new price discovery mechanism by which peers are able to trade with each other. So it gets you away from the paper and puts you in an environment where the trades themselves and the people or the institutions or the dealers that are offering or purchasing that metal are deciding the price. And in a small market such as gold and silver, which can be very easily manipulated, I think this is where the future is going to be. So we really want to be a part of that from the company standpoint, and then also be able to offer it to our clients. So that's where I see the future going, and I think it's very much warranted and needed in this industry.
Is there another metal? Is there another location that you think that you'll expand into? I mean, I've talked to folks who say palladium's going to be the next hot thing. Are you going to get into palladium? Are you going to say, oh, now we want to service the Middle East, we're going to open up shop in somewhere over there?
As far as manufacturing, we're pretty well rooted in the U.S. Now, not to say we haven't had offers from some of those places you just mentioned to go and set up shop. But from a storage standpoint, diversification, there's no free lunch in investing, but diversification is about the closest thing you can get to it. And if you're talking about storing wealth, then, keeping a little bit in the U.S., a little bit in Singapore. The Freeport also has a facility in Luxembourg. So having a little bit there may be an option. I think it's really a case-by-case basis, and, each client really needs to evaluate, their risk tolerances and make sure that they're making the best case scenario decision for their situation, of course. So, could other opportunities come our way throughout this? Of course. But I think partnering with the exchange has really provided a launch pad for a lot of these initiatives to get rolling. And it's really been eye-opening, not only for us, but for our clients.
Eric Highsmith from Scottsdale. He's going to be talking more about, especially about this gold leveraging plan at Passport to Freedom in Cancun. But I wanted to bring him on and give you a little taste of what those of you who will be joining us will be hearing. What I'm curious is, when you talk to the U.S. persons in your audience, in your customer base, and you say, hey, we've got this thing in Singapore, I'm always curious to hear what the average retail investor in the United States is saying, because I know that there are lots of gold companies that are advertising on talk radio and telling people to go out and bury it in their backyard. And are you having good success? Obviously you are, but talk about it with getting people to say, I'm going to put my gold in Singapore. It's a very un-American thing to do, it seems.
Well, I think a lot of the people we talk to have tried maybe to get their gold in Singapore or in some offshore location without much success. And the reason being is they possess gold here in the United States.
They already have it.
They already have it, right. And they may be purchasing more, but the bulk of it they have. So the question and issue arises, how do you get it over there? Number one, it's going to cost you a lot to ship it. How do you insure it? And is the entity that you're going to send it to, well, are they just going to store it, or are they going to provide liquidity on your metal? I can tell you right now that majority of storage facilities that offer liquidity, they're not going to offer that liquidity unless you bought that metal from them. They're going to want to see a chain of integrity for that metal because they want to know it's authentic. So how can they know it's authentic if it's coming from, Bob Jones' backyard? It's pretty tough to know that those gold bars or silver bars aren't hollowed out and filled with tungsten, because we know we've seen it. We've seen it in New York with PAMP bars. We've seen it in Switzerland. We've seen it all over the world. Unfortunately, fakes are going to get made when a very high-priced commodity is in the market. So what we've done, almost by accident, is solved this problem. So take, for instance, a client who has metal at his house, and he wants to get it overseas. Well, if he sends it, he's going to have high shipping rates because he doesn't have any negotiated shipping rates with any of the big carriers, Brinks, UPS, you name it. The second thing is that entity that he sends it to probably isn't going to accept it if they're going to give him liquidity. So that puts the client in a situation of what we call a forced liquidation. So under a forced liquidation, a couple of things happen. Number one, glaring, would be a taxable event. They're forced to sell. Therefore, that metal that they've been buying for the last 20, 30, 40 years is now taxable at their income rate. So it's a pretty big hit. Number two, you're selling at a discount. You're selling here in the States, you're selling at a discount. It may be spot, maybe spot less, X number of dollars or percent. And then you're going to have to turn around and you have to send that money overseas and purchase at a premium. And you're talking 5 to 15% spread. It can be significant.
You could lose half your cash.
Exactly. So the program that we developed to really solve this problem. It's called our asset transfer service. And what we do is provide an all-inclusive service. We pick up the metal, whether it's a commercial, residential address, another vault here in the States, or even overseas. We'll bring it back to our facilities here in Scottsdale. We'll inventory that metal. We do a set of verifications on that metal, about 5 different ones. Each of those is non-destructive. If the client wants to swap that metal, say they have gold, they want silver or platinum, palladium, we give them that option as well. Maybe they have 1,000-ounce bars, they want them refabricated into 1-ounce rounds. We'll handle that as well. Once that metal is authenticated, we put our stamp saying, hey, we're 100% guaranteeing this metal to be authentic. It is then eligible to enter the Singapore Precious Metals trading platform. We arrange all the export documentations. We handle all the insurance, all the permitting. The actual metal itself is exported on our account. Therefore, you have an anonymous export of that bullion. So the U.S. government doesn't have record of it being exported by the client, but by the company Scottsdale Mint. So all that information is held private and confidential, so the client doesn't have to worry about us reporting to a third party.
And people can all do this legally, obviously.
All legally, absolutely. We've got metal going there every day. It just rides with it. Whether it's going Brinks, whether it's going, our partners, UPS, FedEx, we make sure it's handled in a very safe, efficient, secure way to get the client's metal there quickly, but also have them in an environment where liquidity is not an issue. Because if your metal is halfway around the world and you want to sell it, how are you going to request it back? You're talking days, weeks, months for that transaction to take place versus an environment that Singapore Precious Metals Exchange offers, which is instant liquidity.
Yeah, we wrote another book on offshore gold, and there's all kinds of different solutions. There's guys who say they'll hire accounting firms for you. There are guys who say they'll do this. Everyone has their own different take, but it seems to me that the most innovation has come out of a very small number of companies like yours in Singapore. Let me ask you this, though, because I always ask this. When you're not personally overseas, but you've been over there with the guys who are running this, and I know the Freeport in Singapore very well. What was one of the biggest challenges implementing this all on a global scale? Because you're talking about logistics, you're talking about customs, you're talking about stuff that really nobody else has figured out on this scale before. What was your biggest challenge as a business?
Partnering with the right people.
That's important.
Exactly. And Singapore Precious Metals Exchange has been built on a series of checks and balances, right to the third-party vaulting, the auditing, the verification, the logistics, the banking, you name it. It's all third-party. So what this provides is constant checks and balances on one another. And you won't find that amount of transparency with any other vault custodian. So as you can imagine, partnering with the right third parties was critical. We didn't want to get into an environment where we said, hey, we want it done the right way, let's just go do it ourselves, because it's not as trustworthy then. So we've created a series of checks and balances with these independent third parties that act as controls. And you have transparency as a client into each and every one of these steps.
And that's one of those things that I think, I talk to business owners, the most successful business owners, they do two things. One, they have standard operating procedures. They have it all laid out. They have the checks and balances in place. They know kind of what's the process, where they're going, what works. That's what makes a franchise restaurant better than the local sub shop. There's processes, checks and balances. And the second thing is you're saying is people. I was going back.
Absolutely.
I was going back to the very first show we did, not this show, but the show before this show. And the very first interview we did with Neil Strauss, my buddy who wrote the book, many books, but he wrote the book Emergency. And he talked about getting a sync kits in his passport. And he said, you got to work with the right people, because the guy I worked with, I got my passport, I got my real estate, $500,000 worth roughly. But, the guy I worked with, that lawyer, a month later, he was out there ripping people off, I found out. And everyone lost huge sums of money. And this is what we tell people here on this show every day. Are you going to go down to Panama and start knocking on doors and finding the right lawyer to get your residency and making sure it gets done? Are you going to go out and buy a house and rip it down to the studs and hire your own plumbing contractors and flooring guys and air conditioning guys? Or, is it about people? And I think that you're right. In no other business is it more about people than in this business when vast sums of money are involved.
No, you hit the nail right on the head. Trust and reputation, credibility go a very long way in our industry. And it takes a very long time to build it up. Whether you're vaulting metal, whether you're fabricating metal, or maybe you're just distributing, you can ruin it in an instant. But to uphold your name and to build and create that credibility takes years and years and years. So we could have chosen any vault custodian for our metal in the world, but we went with Singapore Precious Metals Exchange because we felt they lined up with our company goals, our aspirations, more so than any other entity out there. And you have to hold yourself to a higher standard if you're going to better yourself in the long run. And I think that goes for your readers and your subscribers as well. When you're looking to diversify and when you're looking to put metal offshore, money offshore, you can't just put a little feeler out there. You have to know who to go to, why you're doing it, and be able to trust their reputation and credibility.
And this is I want to get into the lightning round real quick, and I appreciate having you on, Eric Highsmith, Scottsdale Mint. You can Google him, and you'll find all kinds of things about him. I think you'll like him as I do. But we get calls. I get stuff from the shady guys. We get stuff from the guy in Serbia who says, "Why don't you offer my passports? We have a special way to do it." I get guys, the guys who say, "We'll pay you 17% for bringing in investors." Listen, not only can you not do things the wrong way, you got to do things the right way. You can't, violate any laws. But also, when people say, "Andrew, I'm going to pay you 17%," I say, where's the money for the client? Because you're right, there's one reputation that you have. And when you go out and you start peddling stuff like some of these people in this business, it's just, kind of lowest common denominator. You end up, being the guys that, when I host events, people come and complain about and make fun of. That, hey, I invested with these guys and it turned out to stink. Because, now I realize why they were promoting it. So for me, I like what you're doing. I've been a fan of the Singapore Freeport for a long, long time, and I like what you're doing at Scottsdale Mint. Hey, Eric, thanks for being with us at Scottsdale Mint. Andrew Henderson here with you on Nomad Capitalist Live. Answer some of your questions. When we come back, stick with me.
Millions of Americans want to move years of accumulated gold and silver to a secure offshore environment. Singapore Precious Metals Exchange has partnered with U.S.-based Scottsdale Mint to help transfer your current bullion out from under your mattress and into their private vaults at Le Freeport, Singapore. You'll maintain full visibility of your metal during the transfer and can visit your metal in person anytime you want. Visit sgpmx.com to learn more about moving your gold and other metals out of the U.S. and into a secure Singaporean vault. Or call Scottsdale Mint at 888-745-2279 extension 3.